Asic.
Welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vasic. You can find me on X at #Kangas, Instagram #Kangaroos podcast. Tonight, I welcome back to the show the one and only Siobhan Rowe. Siobhan, it's been a long time. I think it's been since last year. How you been? You excited about the season coming up?
Hey Dean, what a pleasure to be back on the show. What a mixed bag of lollies we've had so far, and really excited to be back on the show. I've been traveling well. I'd be traveling very well if we get off to a good start in the year, and I'm sure we'll unpack all that's before us for the season. But exciting times. We're just talking off there about how awesome it is to be in this country with this great sport. With round one or the opening round starting tonight. Got the F1 in Melbourne, so a lot of really cool sort of sporting events going on, and it just feels like the pre-season and all of that's accumulated into what will be hopefully a really competitive round one for us and hopefully a win. But very excited to sort of get on this roller coaster again and hopefully more ups than downs for us this year. But we'll have to see as time goes on.
Well, we can only hope. That's for sure. Now, hasn't been a great pre-season, and for a pre-season, there's been a lot of turmoil.
Yeah.
You got supporters going in and trying to almost get rid of the president. There's been a number of other issues. It's a big year for a lot of people at the club, isn't it? And supporters, I guess.
It's huge, Dean. It's huge, and it's a funny atmosphere because I think if you look, we are so, or I might be speaking for myself and some supporters here when I say that I'm always accustomed to having very small expectations on the football club. We've spent 6 straight years in the bottom 3. We've won 20 games total in 6 years. It's a grim record when you look at it on paper. So I guess coming into every year, you do manage your expectations of the football club, but I think considering the draw we have, the opportunities we have in the first 6 rounds, I don't remember a time when there's been this much pressure on the club to deliver. And not just deliver in the sense of growth, but deliver in the sense of wins. And I think that's where the noise is coming from and the disappointment, especially with that Melbourne preseason game where we just look listless. And I know you've had Mark and Jesse and Frank on, and you've discussed the idea that the noise coming out of the club was bolstering the defensive efforts and what we saw in that Melbourne practice game. Honestly, I had to turn the television off when I thought it's going to be another really long year for all of us. And I think people are now feeling, again, personally, a little bit as if the club now needs to start giving back to us supporters and giving back to themselves, because I think we are entering somewhat of a new era with the new captain Nick Larkey and vice captain Harry Sheasel and a different looking leadership group with Comben and Zerha and LDU in there. So it's up to now those players that have seen little to no success to start bringing that to the football club and giving your Wardlaws and your Fino Sullivans and these guys a bright future for the North Melbourne Football Club. So it is an exciting opportunity for our players, but one they have to start growing up and rising to. Maybe we'll unpack part of what we saw in the Collingwood game just gone by, but obviously we didn't start well, and then again to sort of let those teams get a run on and get to 30 odd points up. It was impressive to see us come back and put in that solid performance, and also I think they cared about winning that game even though it was a preseason game, and that was an attitude, if you ask me, turn around to what we saw against Melbourne. And it was nice to see some really exciting moments with Lockie Dobberson kicking a few goals and some systems in place that started to look a bit more like what we hope to see this year. But it has been an interesting preseason, obviously with the mismanagement of Wardlaw, the injuries, the bad luck and fortune, whatever you want to call it, the pressure on Clarkson that's already starting to rise. So I think for the first time in a long time, there'll be a microscope on our footy club, Dean, and we will for the first time see whether or not we can sink or swim in that environment. And clearly with talks of board and potential leadership skills and all that sort of thing, if they don't rise to it, then it's going to be quite a tumultuous year, and consequences are now going to sort of start to arise for bad performances, which I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but we'll see what we're kind of made of a bit.
No, it's definitely going to test their resilience over the first few weeks. Now we'll go to our fearless coach. What do you think about Clarkson's message? Clarkson's message today on the
Mm.
AFL website. He was deflecting and saying rebuilds are too hard for clubs these days, and his message seems a little different from about 3 weeks ago, where the aim for the club should be top 10. He isn't filling me with confidence right now, Siobhan, on either the season. Your thoughts on him, please, and that message, I guess.
Yeah, I read the article today, and it was an interesting piece to read. I think I could be wrong here, but it's the first time he sort of openly admitted that this rebuild is definitely taking a lot longer than even what he thought. Which, I mean, I read some of the statistics to you before, and we all feel it in our guts, really. What we have to endure a lot of the time in terms of the win loss column. Um, what I don't like, and I could just be nitpicking here, he again references his time at Hawthorn and then Brisbane. And I think it's time to leave that in the past now and just focus on the North Melbourne Footy Club and what we have here. Do I think the answer to any of this is Alistair Clarkson? I don't think the answer to, if we have a poor season, which I'm hoping we don't, would be to sack him. I honestly think, and I've said this to you for years on this podcast, that it's a list issue. It's a list mismanagement issue. It's a very skewed list, and we can clear as day see that, considering we're playing players in positions they weren't drafted to or initially sort of scouted to play, purely because it's been parts of the ground have been neglected and roles have been neglected. We have surplus in so many areas, such as the medium-sized forward area, and decent players are not able to be in the side, and then you've got holes everywhere. So I think he's doing his best with the list that he has, but at the same time I sort of agree with what you've been mentioning throughout the preseason as well, in that there isn't a distinctive style that I can see yet. And that everyone needs to buy into team defense, considering how brittle I personally still think that area of the ground is. And if that's not something that they're willing to buy in every single week, we will continue to lose games of football. So I understand it's the preseason and he's under a lot of pressure, and we can't necessarily cast aspersions yet until we see it in the real deal. But the article today was interesting because I think what I wanted from Clarkson when he came on board was that ruthless Clarko, and we haven't ever seen that fully yet. He's almost like a neutered Clarko, like a tempered Clarkson. And I think this year's the year he has to start unleashing a little bit of that rage. Whether that's going on behind the scenes, I can't say. But to come out initially and say we should be aiming to play finals, and obviously finals is to 10th with the wild card round, and then now saying, the game's as tough as it's ever been. Clubs won't now, what we'll do what we did and do a full strip back rebuild. We're seeing progress with our younger players. We're excited for this, excited for that. I think time for that sort of talk's over. I actually enjoyed hearing him say finals is an expectation. I don't want to continue to hear the rhetoric around growth and seeing more development in our younger players. And if that starts off this year, especially with the opportunity we have early in the season, if we're losing those games, it needs to be the hard line of it's not fucking good enough. And if it's the line of, oh, we've seen growth in this area, then I will start to get really concerned about the direction that we're heading in. So yes, it's a hard one to judge at this point in time, but I feel like he's been let down by a lot of areas of the club, such as list management and recruiting, and even probably the strength and conditioning team when you look at this preseason, to allow him to not have the complete assortment of players. I think that's the one thing that we can't afford to have this year is injuries to key players. If that was a continuous theme, then I do fear for where we end up, and fear that that may be used as an excuse, which we don't want to happen. But we'll just see how it all starts to play out. I don't think his job is in significant jeopardy, but if we sit here in 8 months' time and we've won only a handful of games again, then yes, I think pressure will seriously start coming onto the coach.
There's a lot to unpack there, that's for sure. Is it the team defense that's concerning you the most right now. I mean, the D's game a couple of weeks ago was one of the poorest performances I've ever seen. And
Mm.
I know it's a pre-season game, but they're an average team too, and they were resting some players. They were resting Gorn. Christian Salem was on the
Mm.
bench for the first half. And they had a couple others missing, and yeah, it was. I don't know what it is. Like leg speed, they look slow
Mm.
as well, especially when the ball gets on the outside. That concerns me a little bit. The inside 50 entries are still a bit of a concern. It seems a bit of hoofball
Yeah.
on occasions. Yeah, I mean, there's a few little concerns there. I'm hoping it can all come together by round one, but history suggests that your pre-season leads into the season a little bit, and I can't see it turning around too quickly. But I mean, the pressure's on a lot of people. So, getting back to my original question, is
Mm.
what is concerning you the most right now?
Dean, it's some really interesting points that you raise. I think we have talent on the list, but is the group playing together and buying in on everything that's being taught to them behind the scenes together? That I don't know. I think if we don't all buy into the team defense, then we're going to be in a bit of trouble. Purely because I think that is still the brittle area of the ground. And I think we've got a lot of extraordinarily talented high draft picks that we just need to see it click and come together in many ways too. What's concerning me the most? I think this is it's a $1 million question because sometimes we look
Mm.
really good and other times we just. I think it's the lack of consistency. I think is what worries me. If that is somewhat the right answer, but it sometimes we see flashes of really good play and other times it looks sloppy. It looks not great. I think what concerns me the most though is the skill execution. You're right. It's kind of the same issues that we've been seeing for so many years that keep rearing its ugly head in terms of the poor delivery inside 50, the sloppy turnovers, the lack of sort of defensive running that sometimes comes up, and it just doesn't give us a chance. It's it's the letting teams get a run on sometimes too, and that's what I thought was somewhat impressive in the last practice match against the Pies is that we were able to wrestle back the momentum, but they still got 30 odd points in front when that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Any other side on a good day, then they're running away with the game. So um, there are still a lot of holes. I think that the lack of I don't think I can yet identify what the North Melbourne brand is yet too. I think that's maybe the lack of clarity around that. I thought when we brought Clarkson on board that we would have, we had that North Wall for a little while. We had something there, but we used to be very blue collar.
Yeah.
I think that we need to have an identity and a plan that we can stick to. Where if all else fails, we are going back to the fundamentals, but I still think that we leave a lot to be desired when it comes to the fundamentals. And that includes defense, which I still think is a big issue within the list.
Mm. Uh, we'll go to some positives. We can't just be negative all the time, I
No,
suppose, otherwise people might tune out. But there have been some good things, and
absolutely.
I'll go through some individual talent. I think Finn O'Sullivan's been very good in the
Incredible.
pre-season. Tom Blamires, we got him out of obscurity, and he looked very good last week. I think Griffin Logue's form in the back
Mm,
half has been solid. Jai Simpkin on the wing looks good. Lockie Doveston, we mentioned him as a
incredible.
small forward, almost a shoo-in to get a debut this week. So there's been some positives there. Anything else I could add to that, or you want to add to that?
I think a positive for me, and it's a silly one that I'll throw in, but a positive is Cooper Trembath coming on in that
We'll talk
second
about
half
him,
of
don't worry.
yeah. So he's a positive for me. Watching him sort of put the middle finger up in many ways and coming on and really almost changing the game, I think, and showing why it's probably been a little bit farcical that he hasn't been out there the whole time. I have liked the form of Robert Hanson Jr. as well. I think he's shown that he is quite clean with his skills, and that's been something that hasn't been a standout. And I kind of mentioned the concerns for me sometimes the lack of sort of fundamentals, but his skills are on on show and impressive, certainly at times. You mentioned quite a few of them there, but I mean, I also Fino Sullivan's been a big standout in the preseason, definitely showing why we sort of selected him so high. And I've been not death riding, but very much negative on Zane Dersma. But I actually think that he needs to get more of the football, but when the football's in his hands, I can now see why he was such a high draft pick. I think he actually is very skillful. We just needs to have more of the pill. And if that's a matter of getting him sort of settled in one position on the ground, I don't know what the solution is, but I think he has shown a lot of promise this preseason, which has been a really big positive, I think.
Mm. You mentioned Cooper Trimbath. We might as well talk about him now.
Oof.
Was very good in the second half last week, but I don't know if he's going to get a game round one. And if he's emergency or out of the team for round one, I think it only puts more pressure on the selection team and the coaches out there, because it seems like a strange move that they don't feel like they can play Jack Darling, Nick Larkey, and Cooper Trimbath all on the same forward line. That's the message I feel like I'm getting here, Siobhan.
But the thing is, Dean, I'll rebut that with this, is that right now on form, and especially form, if you want to look at it from the back end of last season as well, even our captain Nick Larkey, I'd say Cooper Trembath is the most in-form forward.
Mm,
So
I agree.
it's a very strange decision. Now, I understand that we brought Jack Darling into the football club to um, fill a role and to help out in the ruck and all of that. But if you're telling me that the decision is between Jack Darling and Cooper Trembath, if they're set on CCJ, which I feel as though they are because they do want him as that second ruckman, and I understand that somewhat because of how I think this new ruck rule is going to affect Sherry, which I guess we can touch on as well.
Yeah.
Um, you go with Trembath every day of the week because he's the future. And I mean this in the most respectful way possible because Jack Darling's been a very handy teacher and recruit for us, and he doesn't deserve to not be in the side. But the whole purpose was to bring him in and let someone out, grow into that role. So it's a real head scratcher. And we've seen it previously in the past where I remember we spoke about why is Darcy Tucker being selected for round one when there were other players banging down the door. And I think it's the break in case of emergency players being rolled out early on in the season. I think this has happened before because they want to bank wins and they want to prevent, any early season lack of form. I don't quite understand what it is, but it's good to have pressure on spots. But I don't think in any way, shape, or form there's a world where Cooper Trembath's spot should have been under any threat, considering how he ended the year. So it's been a real mystery over the preseason. And like I said, the clear answer to this is having Larky and Trembath as your two key forwards. CCJ, I understand he's coming back from an injury. I understand you have to play him in some capacity. They're obviously concerned about the ruck, but let him have some VFL games first and break his way into the side. If you're not willing to drop Darling, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a real head scratcher. I think it's got everyone dumbfounded.
Well, it's a bit strange. I mean, Jack Darling's 34, and he can still play a leadership role in the VFL, come in for the odd game if we do get injuries. Whereas Cooper Trimbath, this is a big year for him, and it's a big development year. You could get 20 games into a key forward here. You can see the combination of how that works with Nick Larkey, and he's showing signs as well, Siobhan. He's got a great leap, and especially with this new rule, he could go in at centre bounces. You could have Tristan Sherry start at centre forward, and then if they square the centre bounce, they can swap it over. So, yeah, and
He's
Cooper
more than
Trimbath,
capable. He's got a great
yeah.
physique. He's filled out. He's certainly not a shrinking violet in that aspect. So I don't even think the excuse of using CCJ as the second chop out ruckman is even an excuse that can be used. So yeah, it's a real head scratcher.
Actually, look, I'll defend CCJ here. I think his form's been okay, but he only played like 30% game time last week, but he was okay. He took a couple of nice marks and moved around the ground pretty well. It sounds like he's had a decent pre-season, albeit he had a calf injury there for a few weeks. I'm not sure. Look, like Mark said and yourself, he probably needs a few weeks in the reserves and really dominate there before they consider bringing him in. But I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, it seems like a bizarre decision that they haven't gone with Trimbath, and they may not go with him for round one. For him to be in any doubt for round one is a bit of a bizarre, thing. Um, we'll go to the
Dean, I'll
big.
very quickly throw in, and I'll
Yep.
ask you this as well. You mentioned before the biggest sort of red flags that I'm sort of seeing over the preseason. I'll give you a curly one that's not on field. I think what's frustrated me is the lack of communication and transparency from the club about a lot of things. So hearing from external media outlets, hearing from um, leaks or sources before hearing directly from the club about injuries. And I think supporters might have, well, I personally would have wanted to hear more from the coaching staff about some of the decisions and what's been going on in the preseason rather than just from the players. And even they've done previously in the past, like fan Q&As and things like that. And I'm sure a lot of people would be asking why Cooper Trembath hasn't been one of the first selected. And I mean, they can answer that or they don't answer that, but at least to have some transparency around certain things would have been appreciated. And I think that may be why we have seen some of the furor, if you want to put it that way, rise up around the board and things like that. I think is because we just don't hear from them as much as what we used to. And whether that's a reflection of maybe the pressure the club's feeling, not wanting to give too much away, whatever it might be. But I would have liked to have heard about the Wardlaw situation and some of the other things before, even when Goad went down, from the club before other sources. I think that's good, strong football clubs are in control. And I feel like over the preseason, it's been a lack of control from the club.
Yeah, I think that's been an issue for probably a few years now. That they seem to go into hiding a bit, especially when results have gone against us. The George Wardlaw one, I think Clarkson spoke briefly about it and sort of saying, I thought he looked like he was ready to go. And what was even more bizarre when he did that interview saying, just take it easy, don't go too hard, which is a strange message from a coach to sort of tell someone to take it easy. George Wardlaw's not going to take it easy, and you shouldn't be telling that to any player that goes out on the football field, whether it's a practice match, a VFL practice match, or anything like that. They should be going as hard as they can and trying to impress and push their case for a senior spot. To say that, it was really bizarre. But it's been a bit of a bizarre few weeks, to be honest with you, Siobhan. Now, the three talls down back, they have their moments, but it's a glaring weakness, I feel. Can you trust Pink, Logan, Comben to hold down the fort this year? Maybe early this year at least till maybe Aiden Core comes back, but I don't have too much confidence in that. And I guess to follow up on that question, why no Will Dawson either?
I'll be really honest with you. I'll make this very short and sweet. The answer to that question is no. And I think it's going to become and I don't want to come on here and be negative, but I'll just give a pre-warning to all the listeners that if we discuss our defense throughout the year on the pod, then my attitude will be fairly negative until they can prove otherwise to me. But you look at the best teams in the comp, and not even the best teams in the competition, but where we want to be, which is that middle rung. Um, there's no one in that group of, this is no disrespect, they're solid, hard-working players, but we don't have a Harris Andrews, we don't have a Jacob Liedering, we don't have a Tom Barras, we don't have a solid, reliable defender that can take the opposition's best forward every week and nullify them. They are battlers, and I mean that in a respectful way, but they're no superstars. And I think when you have a defense as unsettled as what ours is, it's going to rear its head. And even the weaker clubs that we play in the early rounds of the season, like I still get very nervous. George Yardies, Nate Caddy, even the clubs that are expected to not be high up on the ladder still have forwards that are dangerous, that I just don't trust any of those players to go out and do the job. Will they try hard? Will they do their best? Yes, I can promise you that will be the case, but it's just not a combination that fills me with great strength. I think that if it's tragic what happened to Blake Threadgold, because I truly believe that he might have played early in the year. He had the physique as well. Obviously, playing senior football too was going to hold him in great stead. But you look at Will Dawson, and it's a very I honestly thought one of the highlights of last year for me was watching him play on Sam Darcy. And he's one that will try his guts out, and he's the future. So it's a strange one that he's had limited game time. I do expect him to play early in the year. I would hope he plays early in the year, because he's going to hold down one of the defensive posts that we so desperately need. He's in the right age bracket, and he needs some games and experience. And if he made a mistake, I'd be less likely to be cross than if Griffin Logue or Aiden Core or Toby Pink made that same error. So I think as a supporter base, we're more lenient towards players that are out there that are young and giving it a crack than the same players that make the same mistakes every week. So yeah, that's all I'll say on the defense. It struggles to fill me with a lot of optimism, and it's clearly the most the weakest line, and we will need to rely on our mids and even our forwards to defensively run to give them a chop out, because otherwise, I do think that throughout the year we'll be having the same conversations.
Oh, definitely. We definitely will. I'm sure that'll come up a few times this year, the back seven. But I think the small to mid-sized defenders are okay if they can stay fit. Like Riley Hardeman should have a big year, as long as he's fit for round one and so forth. But Tom Blamires obviously would come in if Riley Hardeman isn't fit. If Riley Hardeman's fit, I think he may miss out, because he got Colin McKercher. Should be okay for round one. He's going to give us a lot of drive out there. I mean, the concern with the smalls is that we don't rebound the ball from inside defensive 50 to inside 50. I think we'll last in the competition for that last year. And the ball was going in our defensive 50 a fair bit. So that's something we've really got to work on, don't we, as well?
Yeah. I'm still baffled as to Caleb Daniels' role in the side, because I really did think that
there's been a lot of talk about him, Siobhan, that he shouldn't be getting a game.
Where do you stand?
I thought he was good against Melbourne. He can't defend. So having him and McKercher in the same defence makes me really nervous, because they're not great defenders, and we need a small lockdown defender. It might be Luke McDonald, but even he's struggling with his fitness at the moment. So I don't know who else it could be. I don't think Robert Hansen is the answer as far as that goes. I think he's more of a replacement if McKercher got injured or something like that, because you can't have Daniel, McKercher, Robert Hansen all in the same back line.
No.
That's a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, with Caleb Daniel, I've never been huge on him. His ball use has probably just been above average, but he needs to be elite. It needs to be elite for him to, for North to get, or for us, I should say, to get the best out of him. His ball use has got to be elite, not just above average. That's not good enough. That's because defensively he's non-existent. And you would have seen David King and Lee Montagna last year highlighting how poor defensively he was in a lot of games last year. But the club seemed to rate him. Siobhan, he came sixth in the best and fairest somehow.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because I think when I know that we're serious about challenging for the F word for finals will be when I think we move past players like Caleb Daniel, and that's no disrespect for what he does for us, because I think he does fill a role, and that also worries me when you look at it like that too. It's obviously there are certain players like Josh Goda that have just had a horrible run of injury, and I think if he had that opportunity, then he'd be an absolute must in the side. And obviously Hardeman are the two when you think of the speed, and Blamires was amazing in his first sort of game at for North, and his disposal stood out like dog's balls, purely because I think we don't have a lot of that in the side, Dean, that good pace with a lethal kick. That's what I thought Caleb Daniel was going to bring when he came across. So it's possible that over the course of the season that maybe he's phased out by a Blamires, and when Goda comes back, I don't know what the structure will look like, but Yeah, there are holes down there for sure. And where does Bailey Scott fit in the side, Dean? He's one that's kind of been playing on my mind over the preseason because last year was such a disappointing year for him. And I think to myself, is he someone that can maybe go back down there and he's played the role before to help out, especially with McDonald still injured? Is he someone that can fill the role there? Can he find the form that he had that kind of made him one of my favourites? So it's a real head scratcher with him too.
Well, based on last year, I think he's down on a pecking order. I think Dylan Stevens went ahead of him.
Mm.
Josh Simpkins on the wing as well now. I don't know if it doesn't look like they're going to put him in the back line.
Yep.
And he's going to have to play some really good VFL football to get that opportunity. He started against Melbourne, I believe it was, and
Yep.
he was barely sided. Nothing really changed from last year. I know it's only a small sample size. So, and then last week he came on last quarter, didn't do much there either. So, he's on the outer at the moment, and he's got to work hard to get back in to the frame. And if he struggles again this year, then that's probably it for him because he's a player that's out of contract. So it's a big year for him. But we'll have to wait and see how the opportunities and how he plays in the VFL. Do the ruck rules worry you with Tristan Sherry at the moment, Siobhan? I don't think it's suiting him right now because he seems to be getting out-jumped by... there was that young Nolan Ruckman from St Kilda and last week as well. So, yeah, Heath, that's it. And last week as well. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't as glaring, but there are a few concerns there as well, aren't there?
On face value, the answer to that question is yes. It's really hard to know because I think the game, it's a rule that didn't need to be changed. And I know this is coming from a place of feeling pissed off that it may disadvantage us, considering we now have one of the best rucks in the league and they have to go and change the rules to disadvantage him. So that's probably, I'm coming from a place of a bit of frustration in that aspect. But I think the rule changes this year are going to be really interesting, and how they're implemented. This one in particular, I think, will have a significant impact, not just on Tristan Sherry, but competition wide. Um, it is about that jumping athletic ruckman, and what Sherry's so good at is being the opposite of that. He's more the ruckman that is physical, that makes his presence known, and I think that's what somewhat they're trying to wipe out of the game. Now, did he somewhat protect himself in the preseason from getting injured and didn't go as hard as he could have in those contests? And that's why it didn't look as physical and as like he was being beaten in the ruck. Only time will tell. But I do think that the rule has significantly taken away his strength, which is his strength in the ruck contest, and his physicality and presence that he gives us. He obviously has great ruck craft, and his follow-up and effort and work rate around the ground can't be taken from him. But I think he's also very much a confidence player, as are all AFL players. And if you feel like you're getting beaten in the ruck, are you feeling confident to then back up and give 120% like you usually would if you felt like, he's involved in the game, he's feeding it down to our mids? I think what concerns me the most about it is if it is a case of the ruck rule disadvantages him. Our biggest advantage still is our midfield, and that once again comes down to the way that we've drafted. So if our midfield can't get on top and take advantage, it's going to be so easy for sides to score against us. So that's why I think even though we haven't been successful, we've seen improvement is purely down to how good Sherry's been. So if our midfield can't get on top because the ruck isn't rucking as well as he has previously, what flow and effect does that have? These are all questions that I guess will be answered over time. But do we see Sherry more forward, or is there a contingency plan that Parker has to potentially the rule disadvantaging him? Do you think it's a matter of pre-season taking it easy, or do you think it is something that's going to impact him throughout the year?
I am a little concerned because I don't think he's great athletically. I think his best work is done as far as wrestling goes. Yeah. And he's good when the ball hits the ground. He will tackle hard. So that's the thing that concerns me. And I think you've even seen it in the first 2 weeks. If he loses a head out, sometimes that midfield is very one-sided, offensively minded, and when we lose some of those midfield clearances, they lose them really bad. I think Kozzy Pickett strolled through to inside 50 and kicked a goal from one of them, and there's a few other times as well. If there's a bit of pace in that midfield from the opposition, we don't seem to have
Yeah.
the defensive ability to stop it. So it is a little bit of a concern, and they may have to look at alternatives just in case. Look, I think the first few weeks they'll certainly stick with it, but they may have to look at alternatives and maybe just taking him out of the centre bounce and putting him forward,
Yep.
and putting in maybe a Trimbath or a Goad, whoever's playing in the ruck. I think we talked about it earlier. Trimbath seems all right in the ruck. He's got a good athletic build, so if he needs to go in a ruck for a centre bounce, just one centre bounce, when a team kicks a goal, I'd have no issues with that. And then you can just swap it around as soon as the centre bounce is done. So it's certainly things they're going to have to look at.
Do they
With the,
play Matt Whitlock early in the season, Dean, or is he still someone that you think will need time to develop his body and his craft?
well, they've got there's a lot of other forwards that look like they're ahead of him at the moment.
Do you think that they will potentially play him in defence, or you think he's now set as a forward?
It looks like they're developing him in forward line. He
Yeah.
kicked 5. Was it against us?
Yeah, it was the intra-club, wasn't it?
Yeah, he kicked 5 and he kicked 3 in the VFL last week. So, and he looked pretty good in the last few weeks in the VFL last year. He did get a senior game. Look, there's nothing wrong with developing your craft in the VFL for 20 games this year if it comes down to that. With Jack Darling's 34, it might be his last year, so it certainly gives him opportunities next year. And with some good coaching, Jack Darling might go to the VFL with him next year and just work with him closely because, he certainly does have a lot of potential. Beautiful kick for goal as well. So,
He is,
well, at least we've got headaches in that area.
Absolutely.
We want to give Zane Dersma every opportunity as well. Before he wants to go join his brother at Essendon.
And I think he is deserving of it, Dean. That's how. I mean, I've been very critical, but I think he's actually deserving of it. Looks like he's had a dip, and it would be frustrating from his point of view if he wasn't able to at least show his skills and talent for a few weeks before decisions were made.
Yeah, definitely. Midfield now. LDU Sheasel. It seems like the way we win games of football, if they get about 80 possessions between them, I think we're a pretty good team. But the problem is, Siobhan, my concern is if they don't perform to those high expectations, I don't know if we've got any other way of winning a football game from what I've seen. For even the last 2 rounds last year was against Richmond. I think they got 94 touches between them. The Crows, we dominated there as well, and we were competitive. But outside of that, it still concerns me that if they don't have big games, we may struggle, Siobhan.
You've hit the nail on the head, Dean, and I think what I was trying to angle at before when we were talking about some of the things in the preseason that have been of concern is that, like I mentioned, that there's no team. I think the best teams in the competition have a consistent squad. We have the top tier, and we still rely too heavily on the top tier to perform. And if they don't, then we really struggle. And I think the top tier are clearly the likes of Sheasel, Davies, Unak, who, to be fair to them, the game against Collingwood, they were bloody brilliant, and they were part of the reason we got ourselves back into the game as well. Part of that was Lockie Doverson as well, but a lot of the time it was LDU and Sheasel feeding him, which was nice to watch. It's exciting, but at the same time, they need a few mates. I thought the form of Finn O'Sullivan would indicate he might be part of that too, especially with more midfield minutes being allocated to him. I miss Colby McKercher, Dean. I really think he's going to be our point of difference this year. And if we're talking about players that can drag us over the line, I truly think he's one of them, just with his speed and his enthusiasm and his skill, and I think if he gets more midfield minutes as well, it's a really good combination in there. But I do agree that they will need to be firing on all cylinders for us to be winning games of footy, and that's not a realistic expectation.
No.
If it gets tagged or they've had a bad day, which happens, it's life, it's football, there will need to be other players that step up, and I just don't have the full faith that we have enough depth and enough of a talented cohort to fill up those roles when they're not dominating through the centre.
Yeah, it's a system thing as well. Like I think, thinking that you're going to win games of football by dominating the midfield every week is just not recipe for success. And a lot of teams, like I think GWS, Hawthorn, they had some of the worst midfields last year, but they were still able to finish top 4, top 6. Around that mark, whereas you can get away with having an average midfield, and having a good system in place will go a long way. So it's going to be fascinating, that's for sure. And that's probably the issue with the midfield. If they do lose that battle, then the team really struggles, and they showed that last year as well. They weren't competitive, especially that Good Friday game. I think it was the first quarter where we got dominated. And we looked very, very pedestrian. I think it was 4 or 5 goals down already.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. Forward line, now, this is a strength, but the inside 50 entries look like it hasn't changed much from about the last 20 years, Siobhan. It was a lot of hoofball. Getting the ball in good positions, I should say, about 70, 80 metres out, and it was just too slow. Then they never lowered their eyes. It was just a long kick in hope about 20, 25 metres out to a pack, and generally teams would rebound it pretty quickly. So it's something they've got to work on. That we haven't really had anyone that's a type of player like a Brent Harvey who used to lower his eyes and hit the lead-up target. We haven't got too many of those players. We just seem to bomb it in long. Even LDU, when he's got time and space, seems to just bomb it long. Harry Sheasel, for all the skill he has, generally isn't great at kicking the ball inside 50 as well. So it can't be just what we've seen in the pre-season. There's got to be a bit of a mixed bag, doesn't he?
It's like the insidious disease of the North Melbourne Football Club. It really is. And that's why it astonishes me every day that Nick Larkey has achieved the feats that he has with the service that he's had at times, especially over the last 6 years when we've barely sort of fired a shot. The forward line is so exciting this year, though, Dean, to be fair. It's finally looking like it's got the recipe for a bums on seats experience. Now, if we can just deliver the ball better and deliver it in a way where at least our forwards can go to work, Dobertson is going to be a player where I think he's just going to be a bums on seats type man, and it's so exciting to watch him and Paul Curtis go to work as well. Obviously, Paul Curtis is going to take a while to get into the season. Obviously, we haven't had a chance to discuss the sort of the trauma he went through in the preseason. So I think if he isn't setting the world on fire, there's a clear reason for it, and hopefully he's able to work his way into the season. It's actually quite incredible that he was out there for the last 2 practice games as well, because the last game against the Pies, I should say. He's a really exciting prospect. The mix is going to be interesting because I think we discussed it a bit earlier how we structure up, but I think having the 2 talls and then the smalls there are a lot of scoring opportunities, which is exciting. And then there's Dersma, who obviously his preferred position would be probably that half forward role, where he's able to take that. His leap's fantastic. He's got a really good set of hands, so it'd be nice to watch those exploits as well. And even Luke Parker, whether or not he stays at half back or whether he gets rotated through the forward line or midfield, what his role looks like. But there is definitely competition for spots there. And the forgotten man as well, Brayden George, too. If he can get himself right, I certainly think he'll be a feature throughout the year as well. I think the one that continues to frustrate me, even in the preseason, is Jacob Constanti. I mean, his kicking for goal is absolutely woeful, and it screams Kane Turner areas for me. So it's just, I think his spot in the side was never under threat last year. I think he does provide the pressure, and he does have good moments to kind of keep him in the side. But I do think this year with Robertson, Curtis, Tremba, Larkin, Dersma, there are so many that can go through there. And even Charlie Spargo, I will throw it up there because I do think that we got into the club for a reason. So it's possible he gets selected at some point too. There are pressure on spots, and players will need to perform by putting on pressure and locking the ball inside 50 and delivering. And I think that's Constanti's flaw, is that he just can't quite deliver on his hard work. It's exciting, really exciting. And I think even, I mentioned him before, but Robert Hansen's Junior's delivery inside 50 was a real positive and he stood out because it's something different that we don't usually have. If I could clone Paul Curtis 20 times and have him delivering the ball inside 50 every time. So, there just needs to be better service, but at the same time, the options down there are as exciting as it's ever been. And I mean, even on the senior players, I know Cam Zurha had a great year last year, but hasn't set the world on fire in the preseason. This might be the first time that his spot might be under jeopardy if he's not able to perform. So that's the area of the ground that I think has taken the most leaps and bounds. And I truly put that down to even Robertson's inclusion because I think he's going to be hard to budge if he can keep bobbing up with 2-3 goals every week.
Now I need your help here, Siobhan. Now when I watched, you've watched Carlton a few times over the years.
Yes.
I've been a little bit high on Zach Fisher.
Yep.
I think they're playing him in his right spot as a small forward. He's looked good in the reserves, had it interrupted pre-season. Do you see a future for him playing as a small forward? I still remember that game against West Coast last year where we stormed home in the last quarter. He kicked 2 or 3 behinds, a couple out on a full. If he hit the scoreboard, he would have had a pretty good last quarter. But I think he adds a lot of pace, a lot of zippiness to a pretty average to slow team. Jacob Astanti, Charlie Spargo, I think you're pretty much same for same there. Whereas Zach Fisher just adds something a little bit different.
Yep.
Do you see it there, Siobhan?
I do, 100% I do, Dean. And the thing is he going to be the first selected? No, I absolutely do. And this is the funny thing. I never thought when it came across that he was going to finish his career as a defender. It wasn't going to work. I think his skill and goal sense and pressure and he's got the right formula. It's just if he can put it together as a forward. But he's shown many times at the Blues that he was an effective small forward and even for us. So I think he is being played in the right position. I just think he'll need to put together a few strong VFL games to get selected. But if he can do that, there's no reason why he can't be a 20-30 goal small forward for us that can be a regular feature in the senior side. There's no excuses. He's not a kid. He's a senior player on our list now, and he's with us for God only knows how many more years, considering the deal we gave him. So if he can almost reinvent himself to what he was invented for as a small forward, then he could be a really handy addition and be another sort of pressure player that we can have in there, which we've lacked for a really long time. But I think his goal sense is something that you can't teach, and he's always had that. So I agree with you, Dean. I think you're on the right path, and if he ends up being a regular feature and a very handy small forward for us, I think we can thank you for that one.
Well, I hope so. So, yeah. It's funny. I tweeted about him a couple of weeks ago and saying, this is your role at Carlton. He averaged like 19 disposals. He played high half forward, wing. He pushed up the ground a fair bit. Kicked 18 goals, 16. And one person retweeted that tweet, and it was Jack Ginnivan. So I don't know what relationship Jack Ginnivan has with Zach Fisher, but maybe we could thank Jack Ginnivan if he starts to come. I don't know if he knows him or anything like that, but or if he was just mucking around or something like that. But he's a bit strange, Jack Ginnivan, anyway. So he's got a bit of weird sense of humour. So you never know. Look, I don't think he gets a game early, but down the track, if you're struggling after 3 or 4 rounds and nothing's going on, then he certainly may get that opportunity. I don't think they'll just give up on him. They got him to the club, signed him to a 5-year deal, and I don't think they're just going to give up on him after 2-3 years. So
no way.
We'll have to wait and see. And the last player, I'm just going to talk to you because I know you've been an avid, staunch supporter for CCJ. We did talk about him a little bit earlier. A lot of supporters are off him. I said before, I don't think his pre-season has been that bad. We didn't see much of him last week, but it's just the Cooper Trembar thing. But it seems like the club want to play 2 ruckmen for some reason. Like if Tristan Sherry comes off the ground with the extra interchange, I should mention as well, with the 5 interchange, it almost seems like the club want to play 2 ruckmen. So one comes off and the other one comes straight back on. So it might be Tristan Sherry, 75% game time, and Callum Coleman-Jones 25% game time, and that's basically might be his role. He's not going to play any other role. Are you still on board with CCJ that he can be the player that we hope he was when we recruited him?
Absolutely, I am, Dean, and I'm certainly not um, doubting his ability that's clearly there and why we brought him across the club. But I don't think that that should be at the expense of Cooper Trembath. That's
Yeah.
kind of my line there. Um, I understand he's probably going to be used more as a ruck. And the thing was, when he came across the club, I think he wanted to come across as a forward. That experiment hasn't quite worked, but at the same time, he's been so unlucky with injury. And clearly he's working his way through that and coming back, and he's done nothing wrong. That's the thing. He certainly hasn't been poor in any way. He's filling a role. Has he been starring in it? Not necessarily, but he's hasn't been terrible. It's just more um that he shouldn't be playing, in my view, at the expense of Trembath.
Yeah.
What they with obviously getting rid of the sub rule now, do you think that they'll use him as the what is it now, the 24th man?
What is a five? Five on the
20,
bench now?
20, I think you're right, 25, yeah.
23rd. It'll be.
23rd, there you go, Randy. Numbers
Yeah,
on
maths not your strong point.
No,
Sure.
definitely not.
Nah, it certainly looks like that from what I've seen. Even I think they asked him. I think it was Jack Rewalt when he was commentating last game, and even he said, he goes, yeah, I think they'll use CCJ as the second ruckman and predominantly just switch him with Tristan Sherry. So that's what I think, but I'm not 100% sure. And it seems like a bit of a strange thing. It always seems like a bit of a waste when you got Cooper Trimbath, who could, if you got him in a team, you could play him as a forward back. Yeah, he's played defence as well. You could play him as a second ruckman, so it just gives you a bit more versatility. Whereas CCJ pretty much could only play as the second ruck and maybe pinch hit forward. But yeah, I'm not sure on that one. So we'll have to wait and see on CCJ, Siobhan.
It's true. It's very true. I think, it's a really hard one because it's not as if he has done anything wrong, but it's just a matter of, it's just who would have thought we'd be having conversations about fitting tools into the side that just at the wrong area of the ground.
So, are you saying there's a bit of a bit of an issue with the list management there, Siobhan? Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. In Rawlings we trust, that's for sure. So, yeah. Look, I'll just finish off with this. Cooper Harvey in the back line. I think that's an example of what we've been talking about. Like he's generally a very good forward, but there's 1,000 forwards at the club. Will Thursfield was on the club intra-club game, and he even mentioned as much that the reason we've put Cooper Harvey in the back line because we want his elite ball use, but we've got too many forwards at the club, and that seems like a poor reason to put a player that's got a strength to his probably weakness because he's not a great defensive player, is he, Siobhan?
No, certainly his strength is probably his goal sense, and that was shown especially in that Melbourne game last year. I honestly thought we'd found a player, and I think if he was to be not given that opportunity to play in that role, or not given that opportunity to play again, and that's a very long boat to sort of to draw there, but at the same time, it would be a real tragedy for him, probably in his mind, because he's being judged on a skill set that I don't think is in his innate nature. He's a Harvey, and he has proven that he is a great forward. So, I think a lot of players have fallen victim to the poor list management decisions, and that is probably the most frustrating thing as a supporter, that we're 7 years down into this rebuild. We've won such few games in such a long period of time that we're heading now to the point of breaking point for a lot of people in terms of not getting wins or losses. But the list, personally, I still think won't allow for the jump that we're all hoping for. And that example is Rob Cooper Harvey is probably why, partly too. So, I'm really hoping I'm wrong, Dean, and we come away after the first 6 rounds and we're laughing and drinking beer and carrying on. But I feel like the deficiencies that we've spoken about for a while are still a lingering issue that'll get exposed on the big stage.
Jacinta meant for more JF. Jacinta, who I have on as a guest during the AFLW season, has asked a question about a pass mark for the first 6 weeks of football. We'll probably talk more about that next week. If you're available, Siobhan, we'll probably go through team selection, and we may even meet at the club, Siobhan, if Cooper Trimbar's not named, so with their pitchforks. But yeah, we'll definitely get more into that next week. More
It's
the
pretty
predictions.
amazing though, Dean. I've never heard so much hype around the first 6 weeks of a season in my life, and it's quite funny because the season is obviously 24 rounds, but the fact that or 23 if you look at the bye, but it's just it's such a short sample size for us before I think pitchforks are coming out, and that's I've never had this experience as a supporter before. You look back on that time when we were 8-0, and I remember that like it was yesterday with Lindsay Thomas running around that big win against the Bulldogs when Jared Waite was playing, and we were flying so high. And the season is a season as a whole. Don't forget that year we won the first 8 games, and I don't think we won another one for about 20 weeks, and we ended up playing the Crows in that final, and that's when really, in my personal opinion, the club started to fall apart when all the veterans were moved on. So I understand the talk around the first 6 weeks and the opportunity we have, but there is also another maths again not being my strong suit, but quite a few quite a few rounds after that too to see what we're made of this year. So yeah, it's a really interesting talking point, and I feel like the furnace is blowing so early on in the year when usually teams are given a grace period to warm into the season, but with us it's just straight into the hot water.
No, pretty much is. And it almost felt like there was a bit of hot water simmering from the kettle last weekend in the Collingwood game. I've never seen so much importance on a practice match, to be honest with you, especially after that poor performance against Melbourne. It felt like a lot of people were under pressure. So they relieved the pressure a little bit, albeit a narrow victory against Melbourne. So, yeah, yeah, it's certainly going to increase over the next few weeks, but very exciting time for the season. Siobhan, that's all I have for you tonight. We're going to go through more stuff next week, like pre-season, pre-season predictions, I should say, but season will be upon us. And a couple other things, best and fairest and all that sort of thing, who you think will win that and so forth. So anything else you want to add before I let you go, Siobhan?
No, it's been great to be back on, Dean. Always an absolute pleasure to chat footy with you. And it's just, I can't believe the season's here. It's always been especially just, just the last few years as North supporters. Sometimes the off season is the chance to just relax, which is it's a strange thing to say, but you do get that circuit breaker from what usually is a really tiring sort of journey for us. But yeah, no time to waste. We have a really big opportunity, which is in a week's time, which is just so scary to talk about. And obviously the year's already started, but teams are already going to have points, and we're going to know where certain teams stand and whatever else it might be. And hopefully we get a good idea of where we stand after round 1 too. So get straight into it. Footy doesn't sleep for anyone, does it, Dean?
No, definitely not. But yeah, it should be hopefully a better year this year. I think I mentioned off air that we've won 20 games from 2020 to 2025. Brisbane Lions won 19 games last year in one season. So yeah, they've got a long way to go, but hopefully they can turn around a little bit this year. But Siobhan, thanks so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate your thoughts and comments. It's been a long time. Hopefully this will be a regular thing now.
Absolutely, Dean. Really looking forward to it, and thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you to all your listeners as well. Don't forget, like, subscribe, tell your friends about the show. I'll be back either Sunday or Monday this week. I'm going to catch up with the boys from further north and the North and the Shin Bonus podcast, I should say. So look out for that.